Today, I'm going to take you on the Wild Alaska adventure tour up into the Caracross and into the Yukon. If you follow my videos, you'll know that I have videos in Skagway, but it's on the train. So the train goes up into the White Pass, and that's the White Pass Railroad excursion. If you haven't seen that one, go check it out. The train ride was awesome. But this time I had a little bit more time in Skagway, so I decided to take a small bus that held probably, 20 people, but we took it all the way up into the mountains. So across the way, we were able to see the train. So we followed the train up, but on the other side of the mountain, if that makes any sense. Our 67-mile journey into the Yukon, we stopped at waterfalls. We found this bridge right here. It's the Captain William Moore Bridge, and it's undergoing construction due to its location on an earthquake fault line. So it requires unique engineering. And the Welcome to Alaska sign positioned at various border crossings. It's a major entry point into the state and serves as a welcoming gateway for travelers entering the last frontier. It is an iconic and symbolic marker that signifies the start of an adventure in America's largest and most remote state. This scenery was none like I'd ever seen. It went on for miles and miles and miles. This part of the drive is called the Tormented Valley, which seemed a little bit appropriate for this rocky and somewhat barren landscape.
And these horses are loaded up with a whole bunch of materials. These horses are not used to the type of terrain that you guys have seen coming up. It was cliff on one side, cliff on the other side. Not very good.
As we climbed up higher and higher in the mountains, about the 7-mile marker, there is a U.S. Border Patrol checkpoint, so you must have your passport with you. Now, if you're looking for the Canadian Border Patrol, it's another 15 miles ahead, well past the White Pass Summit in Fraser, Canada. This is the area where they had a massive mudslide not too long ago, back in 2024, and a lot of tourists got stuck in the Yukon, and they had to fly them to the next stop on the cruise ships. Once we get a little further into the Yukon, we come across the Montana Mountain. Now, this is a deeply eroded stratovolcano located south of Caracross, Yukon. Montana Mountain was formed when the ancient Kula Plate was subducting under the southwestern Yukon during the late Cretaceous period. Montana Mountain is also an important landmark for the Caracross Tagish First Nations living in the area. According to legend, Montana Mountain is one of the peaks Game Mother used to hang a swing for her animal creations. On this swing, each kind of animal danced and sang a different song. In addition to its spiritual importance, the mountain was also an important source of food, medicines, and refuge. As we drove a little bit further into the Yukon, the landscape changed again. It started turning yellow. So the yellow landscape only happens once a year for about a week or 2 weeks tops. So we were very lucky to be able to see this. Kind of reminded me of the Wizard of Oz when Dorothy seen the dandelion field out there. So up in the mountains, we did see a whole bunch of goats up there. They were just hanging out and having a good old time. It does amaze me of how a goat can hang out on the side of the mountain and not fall off. The traditional territory of the Caricross Tagish First Nation, traditional languages are Tagish and Tlingit. Many places names in this area, such as Tagish Lake, Tagu Arm, and Tucci Lake, derive from Tagish or Tlingit names. The beautiful lakes, Howling Rock Lake is also known as Windy Arm. This is the home of the Caricross Tagish people. This is the self-governing First Nation, their traditional territory, some of which is shown on the map. It covers more than 1,500 square kilometers and predates political boundaries. Our next stop was Bennett Beach, but before we got there, we seen this big old bald eagle right in the top of a tree, so we decided to stop and take a couple pictures. At low water in the spring, the beach at Caricross is a couple hundred meters wide, and the water level rises in the summer, and the lake is quite shallow. And our next stop was at the Wild Adventure Yukon, formerly known as the Caribou Crossing Training Post. First thing that I did was I went into the museum, the Wildlife Gallery, and it just took you back into the past of the Yukon. It gave you a little bit of history about the people and how they lived, what they wore, what they ate, what they hunted. The history was that each stampeder that entered into Canada carried 1 year's supply of food with them. And after adding the necessary camping supplies, tools, and mining equipment, the total weight of this load came out to around 2,000 pounds per person. So miners had to carry these loads 33 miles from the beginning of the Chillicothe Trail to Lake Bennett in the Yukon. So without animals such as horses or mules, this meant that many trips back and forth to accommodate the required quota in the Canadian Custom Post. The Northwest Mounted Police were formed in 1873, and they were established to serve as the mounted police force for the Northwest Territories. The Mounties arrived in the Yukon with a contingent of 19 men in 1894. Soon after, with the gold rush bringing thousands of stampeders, Inspector Charles Constantine requested more police and government officials. There was a total of 51 NWMPs in the Yukon, and they maintained strict law and order. So all of these animals in the Yukon had some kind of role back in the day, and some of them are still here today. My next adventure here was going outside to pet the alpacas. They actually had a pretty good sized petting zoo that you could pet goats and these alpacas, which I spent most of my time here because I really love them. They're so cute and they're very friendly. Next, I'm going to take you over and meet the puppies and dogs of the Yukon. So they have an awesome sled dog breeding program that when they're taking a break, they work with the White Horse Humane Society and they assist with fostering puppies as they wait for their forever home. So this allows for incredible social opportunities for the pups before being adopted. This is where the puppies are. This is the puppy school, and they start out as puppies in the elementary area, and then they progress up into the junior high, and then eventually to the high school. Some of the fun facts is that the puppies, they do wear boots in the winter to protect them from icy conditions and the cold temperatures. The teams you're looking at here are comprised of racers, Yukon Quest veterans, and seasoned athletics from many other races. Then they had the area where you could actually pan for gold at the Klondike Gold Rush and see if you were as lucky as one of the lucky people back in the day who found a bunch of gold. This was a lot of fun. So this is an area that you kind of look up and you see the goats sitting up on the side of the mountain. They're not real though. So it's called the Yukon Goat Walk. Our lunch here consisted of barbecue chicken and coleslaw, and we got to eat in these covered wagon wheels. I was starting to feel like I was back in the Little House on the Prairie days. In the front, they had this cabin here, and it was just a replica of something that may have been used back in the Yukon days. So it's kind of short in there. I couldn't really stand up, but it was kind of neat to see. I think the people were just shorter back in those days. And a whole lot of building fronts. I think some of these building fronts were used for movie props. Our next stop was at Emerald Lake. It is also known as Rainbow Lake by the First Nations. Emerald Lake offers a breathtaking view of its truly emerald green waters surrounded by Surprise Mountains and Mount Gilliam. Emerald Lake. That's the reason why, right there. Emerald Lake is located on South Klondike Highway. The color derives from light reflecting off white deposits of marl, which is a mixture of clay and calcium carbonate at the bottom of the shallow waters. The high concentration of calcium carbonate in the water here comes from limestone gravels eroded from nearby mountains and deposited here 14,000 years ago by the glaciers of the last ice age. Glacier erosion was likewise responsible for scooping out shallow lake bed. Here we are at the world's smallest desert in Alaska, of course. This is Caracos Desert, and it's kind of a weird looking thing, but it's right in the middle of nowhere. Caracos Desert, it measures approximately 1 square mile or about 640 acres. It is referred to as a desert, but is actually a series of northern sand dunes. The area's climate is too humid to be considered a true desert. The sand was formed during the last glacial period, when large glacial lakes formed and deposited silt. When the lakes dried, the dunes were left behind. Today, sand comes mainly from nearby Bennett Lake, carried by wind. Dunes were used by locals for sandboarding. Tourist groups also use the area for off-road scenic tours. In the wintertime, the area is used mainly for cross-country skiing and snowboarding. It does bring many tourists each year to the Caricross area. The Caricross Desert is known as the smallest desert in the world. Species of plants that have survived include lodgepole pine and kinnikinicket. I hope you enjoyed my video, part 1 of the Wild Alaskan Adventures up into the Yukon. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my videos. And remember, it's up to you to make it fun and make it yours. We'll see you the next time.